All right, my man. Thank you so much for being a part of this.
Man, I'm so excited to be here. We're friends. We go way back.
We go way back. Do we go pre-beard, my friend. Dude, this is talk to me about the beard. Like again, I love it. I love it. Was it a just,
You
you know,
know, at
a
some
vacation
point,
and then it happened and now you loving it?
at some point, Chris Kringle said, "If we're going to do this thing, we got to grow the beard, get the boots. We got
Yeah.
to go all in."
I
Now,
love the beard, dude.
maybe maybe almost 3 years ago, I was I was up in the Smoky Mountains. Actually, I was taking a drive, and I hadn't shaved that morning. I never knew that I could even grow a beard because it was always so patchy.
Right.
And I just said, I'm just gonna let it go and we'll just see what happens. I'm like, this thing is not gonna grow. I'm just gonna have some mange on my face and people are gonna start saying, "Are you okay, man? You homeless?
You-
What's going on? You looking for a bridge to live under?" And the beard came in. So
what a Christmas miracle. I love it. I love it, man. I love it. I think it looks great. I love it. I love the two
thank you.
tone, man.
Thank you.
That's
Thank you.
great. That's incredible stuff. I love a good, thick, luscious beard. Adds a bit of, I think, validity. It adds a little character. It adds a little
Yeah,
gravitas.
I'm a very serious man.
Yeah, you're serious, man. With the glasses, you got that. What is that sweater? What would that sweater be called? That's not a turtleneck. Is that a, what is
This
that?
is this is a shawl lapel.
A shawl lapel.
Shawl, yeah, lapel, yes.
Just some people do it different. Some people do. I got a hoodie on. Like, that's awesome, man. Well, I want to talk about storytelling. And when I think of storytelling, I think of Hallerin. You've helped me so much in my career in terms of where I find inspiration from. And then once I see it, this is one of the most interesting things that I really want to get into is you told me how you watch movies. And when you watch them, I'll never forget this. And you may remember, maybe not, but you told me, Micah, when I watch movies and I'm moved in whatever way, frustrated, angry, sad, happy, laughing, I want to go back and figure out why. The mechanism that was deployed from that artist, from that actor, from that writer, especially if you see the audience or yourself moved. Is that still something? And talk to me
Uh,
about that a little bit and why you do that, how you came up with that, and what that's helped you kind of accomplish in your own art.
Goosebumps, high blood pressure, giggles, right? If
I love it.
something makes you laugh, if something runs your blood pressure up, if something gives you goosebumps, is there is there something there in the way the story was told visually, the dialogue, the music? Is there something there that connects with the human spirit that is a common thing? Like it's a thing. And when I discovered this was probably the most consequential educational moment around story happened in New York City, I don't know, maybe a decade ago or more, when I went to Robert McKee's story workshop.
Hmm.
It's 4 days, and it was the most incredible educational experience around story that I've ever had. His book Story is, is one of the seminal works, and he's the dean of Hollywood script writers. And I wanted, in trying to understand story better, and because we live in such a visual culture, I said, man, if you understood screenplays and how you tell a story on the screen, you would, maybe you could develop better stories. And I'm still, I got a long way to go. Anyway, you go to New York and they give you 20 films to watch before you get there.
Wow.
And then there's a study film. In this case, it was Casablanca. And we spent the first 3 days discussing what story is and how story works. And then on the last day, you take the screenplay to Casablanca and you spend 8 to 10 hours, and he goes scene by scene, and he shows you what's on the screen, and then he's telling you why this works that way, right?
Right.
And I'm sitting there and I'm having all of these moments of insight. For instance, Rick and Ilsa, when Ilsa, the main female protagonist, her husband, she and her husband are they're just in a functional relationship. They are not in love. And in every scene where she appears with her husband, there's something between them, a lamp, a flower, something. Throughout the film, you have this feeling that there's distance between them, but you can't figure out why you feel that way. Well, the writer of the screenplay used a device to separate them to create the feeling of separation. There was an actual thing. You felt it. You would never know it. I remember sitting in that theater in New York, and when he said, "Okay, I want to show you something else." This guy Rick has he has this bar and this casino, but he's trapped in this space and he can't get out. And inside the casino, he has everything. Outside, the Germans are occupying the world. And on the upper rim of the room at all times, you see a faint projection of a fence, a barbed wire fence. And it just very subtly gives you this feeling that he's in a cage. Right? So when I went to that learning experience, and then I started to deconstruct great stories, that's when I started going, okay, when I go to a film, the first time I just want to go and I want to watch the film as a consumer, as a consumer of story. So I don't go to analyze, I go to feel. If it's a really great story, well told, the next time I go to watch the audience experiencing the film, right? And so I want to see the moments where collectively everybody's like, or like, and I'm paying attention to my response to. Now I'm analyzing my response.
Right.
If it's a really great story, well told, then the third time through, I'm analyzing the production itself, right? I'm the length of a scene, how the score plays against the scene, the dialogue, whether it's sparse or whatever, the through lines, the
Right.
plots, the subplots. I'm doing the analysis. And when I started to watch stories that way, you start to figure out, and so that just became a thing for me, just trying to understand how to tell stories better.
Yeah.
And the more I study story, the more I realize I got a lot to learn.
Yeah.
I have so much. I'm in the middle of writing a musical right now.
Oh, wow.
I've been working on it I've given myself 7 years to finish this, and I'm in my third year of working on this. And this morning I was on my legal pad and still wrestling with how to tell this story. And so it's wonderful.
That's
It's
awesome.
scary. Yeah.
Yeah, that's as most storytellers would say, hey, this is the most wonderful, horrifying event that I've ever encountered, and I'm doing it voluntarily.
Yeah.
So as a radio show host, as a podcaster, as a TV show host, as all the things that you've done professionally in terms of which I would easily come under the umbrella of a storyteller, a lot of people listening wouldn't traditionally identify themselves as a storyteller, right? They're a coach, they're an engineer, they're a mom, they're a dad. And so what I hope out of this and the coming content is to inspire people to first of all realize that we're all storytellers, all of us. No matter the size of the audience, no matter the mechanism or the medium in which that story is being told, we are storytellers. And so that's kind of the desire and the heart behind some of this message is I think a lot of people have fear for jobs, and with coming technology and AI, what's it look like for us? And I think at least for right now is what I see is, man, creative problem solving and storytelling in this medium and some other things cannot be reproduced. And
Right.
so if we can help people say, hey, create more confidence in sharing their own story, convincing others to be a part of what they want to be a part of, right? If you're a teacher and you want to do something new within your school, you have to get and build a coalition of people. Share why you want to do these different things, why you want to change the school schedule, why you want to change this. You have to tell that story. And the better you are at telling it, the more compelling you are. Steve Jobs said the best storyteller in the room is the most powerful person in the room. So let's talk about that quote. Has that quote for you bore out to be true in your profession as you've seen others do it? And do you have a story to tell that makes that ring true or false in your ear about the best storyteller in the room is the most powerful?
Yeah. So a couple of things. I think story is the one thing when I thought about my career. I don't know if I had foresight or whatever it was, but I remember in the 1980s believing that there would be a convergence of technology. I didn't know how it was going to happen. I even wrote a paper about it. And I asked myself the question then, I said, what is the one thing that will be platform agnostic, that would be like, that would survive any platform? And the only thing I could come up with was story, right? Muriel Rukeyser said the universe isn't made of atoms, it's made of stories, right? And so I said, well, man, if you learn to be a great storyteller, a great story told will work on any platform, right? And so I'm like, okay, so let's go in search of that thing, and it's bearing out. So I was thinking about how podcasts have emerged. I was thinking about how, we grab these things and we got a studio in our hand,
Right.
right? So story does cut through if you understand the power of story. So I agree with
Right.
that. I agree with that comment. The other thing that I would say is any person that's watching us right now that has ever told somebody what happened or what happened next told a story.
Right.
We're all telling stories all day, right? The question is, are you conscious of that? Are you intentional? And do you know how to leverage this human thing we do called story to help you help other people?
Right.
And so in ministry, when I think about the ultimate storyteller, that would be Jesus. And if you think the ultimate storyteller, the ultimate communicator, had to package the most powerful information in the history of history and give it an ability to move through millennia, what was the technology that would move the story of the human experience of God through millennia, thousands of years? They had no idea that we would be able to be on this platform like this, but we're still telling stories on
Right.
this platform the same way they might have been around a fire, or the same way I think they say the first stories were told on the walls of caves,
Sure.
you know. So this technology seems to go beyond, and that's what Jesus used.
Yeah.
He would sit down with people and he would take profound mysteries and package them in a story.
Yeah.
You think about the story of the prodigal son, or you think about any of a number of stories, and they're sticky, they're resonant. They stories allow people to find themselves
Yeah.
in the story.
Right.
They are gummy, and what I mean by gummies is, or when they made Flintstones chewable vitamins, and when they
Right.
made gummy vitamins, all the kids were in. So this packaging of
That's
ideas
so
that
good. I
way
love that.
allows people access. So, yeah, that is very true.
I love what you said because I always I say I don't believe the message changes, but the mechanism can change as much as it wants,
Yeah.
especially in terms of the gospel that you so eloquently brought up. But so let's talk about on a practical level. If you were not in the role that you were in, if you were to give someone one thought on, you said, hey, if you've ever said, hey, this just happened, or what happened next, you have told a story, you've done it, you got to work and did it, you did it around the lunch table, you did it at the coffee cart, you've done it. Are you conscious of it? And are you honing that skill and that gift, which I think is one of the most powerful gifts on the planet? You don't have to have a mic on stage and people sitting watching you to be not only elegant in the craft, but also persuasive and potent and powerful, and help you with your career, help you with your family, help you in your marriage, help you. And so if you could say one thing about someone that wouldn't even call themselves a storyteller, or they are and they're listening to this, they're a pastor, and it was, if you can only give them one, what will be the single most practical and potent thing you've done, you've seen, you've been told that just resonated and was so just changed the game for you in terms of your own personal storytelling?
Know what your story's about. I think that's, like I said, I've been working on this musical. It took me 2 years to write the end of the story.
Wow.
This story is about this.
Yeah.
And in one sentence, this story is to communicate this. That kind of clarity gives you the freedom to build a story that will bring you to that point. And it's just get clear on what your story is about.
Right.
What's
So
the message?
if you're asking mom and dad, hey, I want to go on this vacation. You're asking the wife, hey, I want to try to do this. You're asking your boss, or you're trying to build this, you're trying to do that. Before you walk in, like, what is that, what they call elevator pitch? What's that one sentence? What's that clear thing that you, if you don't know, how are they going to know? How are you going to communicate? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. When I teach communications workshops and stuff, and one of the things I offer people as a tool is this thing called OSC, one sentence clarity. Right? If you can't, and it may not be the sentence that you say or use. That one sentence clarity may not be ever heard stated in the story.
Right.
But if you don't know it,
Right.
right, that
Sure.
that probably be the single greatest piece of advice. If you said one thing, wrestle with what it's about. If
Yeah.
you had to figure out in one sentence what you want to communicate with
Yeah.
that story,
Right.
that would be, to me,
I love
what's
that.
it about?
In the movies, they call them log lines. And I love, on the Disney app, when you look at a movie, I love reading the sentence, right? Because they have one sentence. And obviously, the platforms have changed so much where you have trailers and you have Reddit and you have all these things. You can know every second of the plot before. But, traditionally, that sentence had to lock in investors, had to get the studios involved. Hey, what is it? What would happen if, when you left the room, toys came alive? right? That's the sentence. It's Toy Story, and one of the most successful, franchises ever. What would happen if when you left the room, your toys came alive? And so that's what I hear when you say that movie that's built over 1 year with hundreds of people and cast and animators and script writers and but they know that's that sentence. I love you say that OSC, what one sentence clarity. And it's not just in the movies. I really think if people could get clarity, even in your interpersonal communication, what are we trying to accomplish? And then hopefully, as you ask yourself those questions, you start to edit those things and adding empathy and adding, hey, this thing seems awfully self-serving. It seems, and hopefully you start to shift.
The reason that becomes so important is it gives you a great opportunity to filter and to edit when it comes time for that.
Right.
Because you ask one simple question. Does this help me communicate that? So when you're getting in the mechanics and mechanism of story, is this going to help me get there, right? Does this add to that? Because a great story has a beginning, a middle, and an end. It has a main character. It has a setting. It has crisis, and it has resolution. That's how human beings consume story.
Right.
So before you even get to using the architecture of story, you got to know what the story's about, or you got to know the question that the story is asking. Maybe not answering, but you at least got to know this is what we're doing, and that's I wrestled. What was interesting is I held myself to this. I wrestled for 2 years. Had these characters. I had this world that I was creating. I'm trying to get these pieces of the story to fit together. I'm going off on tangents. There's not a cohesive through line or thread, and I'm just kind of. I remember one day I was sitting there and I was like, I thought that I was writing. I thought I was writing kind of a thriller of a musical, right? And when I realized I was writing a love story and a redemption story, it changed everything. In fact, all of the characters and the way they fit together just started to make so much more sense because I'm like, I know where you're going to end up, and I know what this story is about. And that clarity was just,
That's crazy. So one thing that I love to talk about is people's favorite story. And when I talk to pastors specifically, I tell them, hey, the redemption story is, I believe, baked into our souls and DNA, right? Because you ask anyone on the street, hey, what's your favorite book, TV show, movie? And if you give me your top 3, I can show you in each of those movies where that redemption story is, where truly it's redemptive of Old Testament stories. You speak to Jesus and his storytelling in the Bible, and how I believe what is one of the most things that resonates through millennia is because humans are designed to be saved. We're designed to be transformed and to be redeemed. And so when we watch it on a screen, when we see Harry Potter discovering his powers and saving the world, we resonate so deeply with that. It's because we were built with a savior complex in mind, not our own, but someone else to save us. And so my question is, with people, why are people binging things that are derivative of Old Testament, Game of Thrones, Lord of the Rings, and not the Bible? What would you say? What do you think the reason for that is?
the language and the storytelling has not been made as accessible, right? So to a modern audience, or you know, Shakespeare, for instance, the way he told stories, the common man of his time or woman of his time, it felt like right now.
Right.
That was there right now.
Right.
And so, it's interesting. I was teaching my Proverbs class, and so I'm a student of the wisdom and foolishness of King Solomon,
Right.
and so part of the setup to studying the writings that are attributed to Solomon is understanding the life of Solomon. And
Right.
so part of the introduction is to answer the question, who is Solomon? And in order to understand who Solomon was, you have to understand who David is. And I remember I put the logo for Game of Thrones up on the screen.
Wow.
And then, you know, David had many sons. Solomon was born to Bathsheba, and he was not the first child born to Bathsheba, but there was a whole line of succession. And there were a whole lot of his half brothers that had to either be killed or moved in order to make good on what some believe was a negotiation between Bathsheba and David. I'll go along with the storyline, but you got to make my son king at some point. And I remember unpacking that story in as if it were Game of Thrones. I said, this is
Right.
a Game of Thrones.
For sure.
And this one had to be killed, and this one had to be moved off, and then
Right.
there was all the intrigue. And I remember unpacking the story in that framework or context, and everybody was like, "Oh, wow, man!"
Right. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Sure.
Just so, how do you take that human story and frame it in a
Yeah.
way now where people will go, "Oh, man." So I think that's part of the work of great teachers and great
Yeah.
storytellers is to really invest themselves in, and this is just coming to me now as we're speaking, in character development,
Yeah.
right? Character development. What would it have been like to be Solomon and David and his brothers, and because that it'll give you a window into how to frame a story so that it's relevant now.
Yeah.
Because
No,
I
I
could
love
take
it.
literally, if you give me the same budget and the same Hollywood stuff that Game of Thrones had, and
Right.
you let me tell the story of
Sure.
Solomon's succession, oh my
Yeah.
God.
Yeah. For sure. Well,
Sorry
the
for
first six
going.
chapters of Daniel, or so many different things that are stories. So that's because I wrote down when you were talking Hamilton, right?
Yep.
I've learned more about the Revolutionary War and some of the founding fathers through Hamilton than I'd ever did through school.
And it's a
Obviously, I wrote down.
contemporary framing.
Sure. I wrote down West Wing as well. West Wing, one of my favorite TV shows ever. Like, I know how many people are in the Senate because of West Wing, not because of
Right.
school, not because of a book, but because that was the medium that resonated with me. So I love that you say that. A little divergence on what you said. Have you ever read The Tale of Three Kings?
I have not.
It's one of my favorite books. You said, because you talk about, and I don't know why I haven't told you this before, because I know Proverbs is such a massive part of your story and what you do on a daily basis. But it's a poetic writing of the story of Saul, David, and Absalom, and it is phenomenal. It's kind of written as a 3-act play,
Oh,
and
wow. I didn't write
it's
that down.
it's unbelievable. Short. I think his name's Gene Edwards, but Tale of Three. I do it on Audible, and it's incredible. You will absolutely love it. I don't know why
I'll
I've never
jump on
told you,
that.
but it's
I love
because
that.
he talks about that. Like, when you say character development, he talks. I actually just listened to this yesterday. That when David left, right, he leaves Saul. Saul says, "Hey, kill him. We want to kill David." David bounces. He's gone. And then it's because it's kind of his underlying message is on authority. Like, everybody believes they're working for a Saul, that they're David. Everybody believes that they're getting spears thrown at us. What do we do when spears throw at us? So he's kind of teaching this lesson through the story being told. But he said David left alone. He didn't bring anybody else with him. He didn't build a coalition of how he's been wronged, which he could have done, and split the kingdom. He just left because his life was threatened. He left. And David became the lesson for the people of Israel before the true David returns. Teachers are teaching kids, don't be like David, right? You think about the time that Saul was still in power, and when David's on the lam, he's gone. How is David being talked to? All we think about is the giant slayer, King David. There's not this massive gap of when he was an outlaw. And if you're an outlaw of the state in Israel, like moms and dads are saying, using David as a story to not be like.
Right.
And it just, just like you said, that character development, that lens, that's the truth of in the pages of Scripture, is just looked at indifferently and told with a story, and just gives us a better framework. Like you say, I love that you said it's the access is tough for a modern audience if it's just the book. If we're just talking about the Bible as is, which I believe the Bible's still powerful and sharper than any two-edged sword. But how do we do it today? Which is the thing that I'm nuts about, right? Is the storytelling aspect. How do we raise biblical literacy in this country, around the world? And I believe that is through the power of story. So
I think part of the opportunity for pastors and leaders is to sit with stories, to sit with them, and to allow their imagination to invest them in the story, right? And I think we rush too much. We don't just sit with, I keep making reference to this work I'm working on right now because it's right in front of me. And I was not comfortable at first with just sitting with my characters.
Yeah, I love that.
Just sitting with my characters. So for instance, let's say you were thinking about King David, King Solomon, or any biblical story or whatever you're working on. One of my characters here is a guy, and I'm asking these questions of the character. What's his name? How did he come to do the work that he's doing? What's his intention? What does he want? What is he trying to get? What's his driving motivation? So I got this character, and I know that I'm going to sit with this person. I'm going to imagine everything about this character. I already know that he used to be very influential and wealthy. He wears a three-piece suit. He has a pocket watch. He has a monocle that he wears in this eye. And curiously, he has a peg leg. And his clothes, though they look really refined, they're ragged. Right? But he's still trying to keep up the pretense of being a cultured, refined person. But he actually looks really hard worn. And I have this visual of him, but just sitting with the character, I'm asking myself the question, how'd you lose your leg? Who were you when you were somebody? And what happened in your life that brought you to this moment? And why do you function the way you function? So now let's take that to the prodigal son. And let's take the prodigal son as a character, and let's just sit with him in his journey. Like, what do you think he wore? What do you think it was like? How excited he must have been when he first got that first tranche of money, and he's headed off to do his thing, and he's idealistic, and what do you think the people around him were like? And then just to sit with it, just to let your imagination imagine sights and sounds and smells, and a Donald Davis, probably one of the greatest American storytellers. And I recommend, if you ever get a chance to go to the National Storytellers Festival in Jonesboro, Tennessee, please do it. First
Yeah.
weekend in October of the year, whatever. But he was the one who told me that when you tell a story or developing a story, involve all of the senses. So you want to help an audience see something, hear something, smell something, taste something,
Yeah.
feel something.
Right.
So if he's in a pigsty, sit with the character and smell what would that smell like? What would
Yeah.
he smell like?
For
Right?
sure.
Just sitting with the character long enough to then when you get ready to tell the story, you may not use this exploration I'm doing with this character, I may not use 90% of what I've discovered. It
Right.
might be one detail. His pocket watch doesn't work. It might just be that one detail.
Right. Yeah.
Because it's broken, but he's
Yeah.
still holding this. I'm a sophisticated guy, and the guy
Right.
next to him notices that thing never works.
Right.
That one detail might tell all, but I can't get to that moment without
Sitting in it.
sitting with the whole story of the man. Does this make sense to you?
Oh, it makes. Oh, absolutely. And
Yeah.
as you talked, I wrote down one of my favorite storytelling kind of mechanisms is turning your audience into their own sleuth, right? And so if
Absolutely.
let's say that character does
Absolutely.
develop, and some would say you never explain why he has a peg leg, you never do it,
Right.
right? And the
Right.
whole time,
Absolutely.
right? Because we're constantly trying to engage them in every aspect, right? I think I heard this on Joe Rogan. Basically, it's not an attention span issue; it's a consideration span, right? Our brains haven't changed in 25 years.
Right.
The chemical makeup of it. So it's not that we have lower attention spans. It's have you and I today more now than ever have more to consider, right? Our phones, our emails, all the things that are grabbing at us. Versus just 25 years ago, it's so much less because it was harder to access us. So for me, making the audience a sleuth. So for this 3-hour play, this guy's hit every time his peg leg strikes the stage floor. I'm wondering when are they going to explain that story to me? And they may never do, or they may. But like you and I both have read or seen something that I felt like was lazy storytelling when they just kind of hit you on the nose with it constantly and just giving you everything. I hate the trailers that tell me the whole story of the movie. I'm like, why am I going to see this? And you told me the beginning, middle, and end in the first in this 2-minute trailer. So I love that you say that, and I love that you just say sitting with your character. So again, have a clear sentence of what you want, the clarity of that, and then don't rush. Give yourself time for imagination. I just love the thought of that. And like you said, hey, I may not use almost anything that I've sat with him for, but if it gets me to that pocket watch, if it gets me to this symbolism of he is holding on to the riches of the past and pretending to be this guy, and the thing that he's holding on to doesn't even work. It's broken like he is. I think
Bingo.
that stuff is awesome.
Bingo. McKee calls it a rush, giving the audience a rush to insight. So you show them something in Act 1 that makes no sense at all, and you put an Easter egg in Act 2 so that they have a moment and they go, oh, that's why that pocket watch doesn't even work. Wait a minute. Right? But you never say it. You just go,
Right.
oh, that's why she has a reaction every time she sees somebody in an orange dress, because the day her mother left, she was
Right.
wearing an orange dress.
Right. Yeah. No, I love that. And all the while, you still have to obviously do them, constantly rolling it out enough to where they're still interested. That's the dynamic of a difficult story, right? We're still talking about art. We're still talking about. I watched Princess Bride 2 nights ago with my kids. That's one of my favorite movies of all time, right? I love The Princess Bride. But if you watch it, have you seen this movie?
I have not.
So The Princess Bride or Dumb and Dumber. So you've seen that movie. So I watched these two movies, and when you watch it, it's like if they would move a degree right or left, the movies would be unwatchable. They'd be unwatchable, Halloran. Like,
Right.
and then it's like, then I ask myself, is it luck? Are you catching lightning in a bottle? Because they've done sequels and they've completely fallen flat. And so when I watch this, it's like, is this on purpose? Is part of it on purpose, and it just kind of happens to catch magic on screen? Because if it just gets a little more silly, it's literally it's unwatchable. Or if it's too serious, or it's just that's what I love watching that kind of stuff. It's like the razor's edge of a story well told.
I don't know if you can get to a really great story. And the beautiful thing about great stories, as you're developing your own story or great stories within your ministry or in your leadership, once you have a really good story, you can tell it over and over and over and over again. It just keeps going. That's why they keep making sequels. That's why they keep,
Right.
because it's hard to find that story. I'm not sure you can get to that without great intention and attention, right?
Yeah.
I may be wrong about it. I may be wrong about it, but I don't think you can. I was telling a story. I tell this story. It's a creative retelling of a conversation that I had with my grandmother, and I was teaching a group of executives, and one guy had been in one of my sessions before, and he said, "Would you do us a favor? They haven't heard the story about, the smile. Would you tell that story? And don't leave out the part about the hinges on the door." Right. And so
Yeah.
in this story, I talk about me going to visit this old lady in this shotgun house in Chattanooga, and I had been told that she was a great woman. And I walk up to the front porch. The door was open, the screen door was shut, and she's standing near the stove. And, "Hey, baby, here I come." And she's waddling toward the door. And I said, she pushes through the screen door, the hinges of which were intentionally unoiled. It was her primitive ADT,
Yeah.
right?
Love that.
And he said, the hinges, I could hear them.
Oh, for sure. I can hear him.
Hear
Yeah.
them. And when you said she didn't oil them because she wanted to hear who was going in and out of the
For
house,
sure.
that one little detail told you it told you the story of,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. It
No, I
took
love it.
me it took me a long time to write that one line. It As I was crafting this story, I remember working on this story, and I was trying to say, how do I suggest that what you might see as a flaw or a defect is actually something she's using
Right.
to track the movement of her 7 kids,
For sure.
right? Without
Yeah.
saying she was raising 7 kids and she needed to know where they were
Yeah,
going,
for
and
sure.
so
No, again, I've heard you tell
I'm
the
really
story. I've been in the
right.
room when you told it, and it's phenomenal. And one thing that I love about what you do, I believe, they call it, chewing the scenery or just letting moments breathe. Because I believe, as we are constantly inundated with, hey, people's attention spans are shortening. Keep it short, keep it tight, keep it intense. That we lose the power in the pause,
Right.
and no one
Precise.
deploys it.
Well,
And no one deploys it like you, my man. No one.
we made a film together, and
Yes, we did.
you and I did,
Yes, we
and
did.
Brother Watts,
Brother Watts. That's right. That's right.
and
Yep.
and to this day, I use that film to tell a
Right.
story, and it works.
It works. No, you get. I love that. about how you communicate in an age, I think we're being told, and that doesn't mean we can't have pace. That doesn't mean that we don't need to increase energy if that's what we're attempting to do. But I think as successful as that mechanism can be, drawing people in with silence, I think, can be as powerful, if not more. And that's something I think you do so very well, is that in all the things that when I hear you communicate and just what's coming next and that desire to hear. Again, you got to bring the goods, right? Like if you're just slow and silent and pausing, you're just bad. There's a difference. But when you've taken the time and you know your sentence, when you've imagined and taken time with I can't remember one of the greatest historians of presidents, of American presidents. I think she's still living. She's written books on, I think, more than most people, and she called them her boyfriends. So she was writing about a president, there was this love affair, right? And to your point of, hey, I'm living with this person in my head, in my heart, and I'm walking in their shoes, and I'm trying to discover these things. And if it gives me nothing but one sentence, right? If it gives nothing but one characteristic, it was worth that time, and it was time well spent. And so I think that's really helpful for those that are listening. Last question I have. So John Maxwell says, spend 80% of the time thinking about what someone else will say versus what you will say, right? So it's 20% what I'm saying, 80% about what the person will say in return. So in terms of practical storytelling, from a pastor, from a teacher, from someone like you or like me, how does that correlate, or is that not correlate? Because he's talking about leadership, but I believe there's a link between leadership and storytelling. Do you agree with that? Or if you don't, what would you say to people, like, to find that clarity in the sentence, find your story? If you're going to have a conversation, if you have a presentation, if you're asking for money, you're asking for investment, you're asking for something out of a relationship, most asks, you're pulling something. And so what would you say is your ratio to that? Or what do you use in terms of when you're writing? How much do you think about the audience versus your perspective?
So let me grab. I'm gonna show you something. Hang on. I'm gonna show you something.
Come on.
I actually have these. I have these all over. I've got different creative spaces here in the house, and in every one of them, I have that.
I love that. Tell me about that. What does that represent?
It represents the audience. Went on Amazon and I bought these little miniature chairs. And whenever I'm working on something, I put the chair right in front of where I'm working.
I love that.
So legal pad is we're here, chair is here. And I'm thinking about my audience. I'm talking to them. I'm going, what do you think? What do you...
Yeah.
The first person I put in the chair is me. Well, what do you think? What do you think about this? Is that really good? Is that really... So first I got to be satisfied.
For sure.
Like, man, okay. Because if you're honest with yourself, that's too many words, bro. That's,
right.
Yeah. The second person, or 1B, is the audience. Like, I want to imagine you sitting there and I'm telling you the story. And I'm imagining you got stuff to do today.
Right.
You got to take the kids to, wherever. You got to pick up your laundry. And you're going to give me some of your time, and I got a story to tell you. Yeah. Is this beautiful for you? Yeah. And I got that from another writer. And so all throughout my creative spaces, I have a 4-step method that I've developed. First, my why. I always try to ground myself in my why. Why do I do this? The next thing is my what. What do I want to communicate? That's that one sentence clarity. Third thing is my who. Who am I talking to? What language do they speak? What language do they hear best? Learn that. And once I've got my why centered, my what clarified, my who identified, then I ask how. How would I best tell the story as it relates to all of those things?
I love that. That's so good. I love the chair, man. I'm like, I'm gonna go over this. I'm gonna send it to Drew and be like, use this. Get better. That's so good, man. I appreciate it. Hallerin, man, I first and foremost want to thank you for your friendship and what you mean to me
Oh
throughout
man,
the years. It's been
awesome,
incredible. You've
man.
helped me so much, and you're obviously a staple in the community that I grew up in, and so I just appreciate your consistency and your excellence and your craft, and your friendship, man. So thank you so much for being on.
Man, I'm first of all, I love you. I'm honored that you would have me on today, and I'm so proud of you. And thank you for the work you're doing to help all of us get better at telling stories that make people's lives better.
Awesome, man.